James Gunn, Gunny, how's it going? How did you go from losing your job, having no work, to having 2 massive tentpole superhero movies? I see. Now, James, you probably don't want to say that publicly. Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here in June. I very welcome my friends, and especially my enemies, and welcome to the DCU Extra. So, finally, James Gunn speaks about his ordeal of being sacked by Disney, and then having these 2 brilliant opportunities, being invited back to write and direct Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but also having the opportunity to write and direct the Suicide Squad movie, which is what I'm really excited about. So I've read this interview, and I'm really, really excited about how he's excited about doing the Suicide Squad. So should we read the interview? Guardians of the Galaxy director James Gunn breaks silence on high-profile Disney firing and what he learned from the career crisis that followed. Right, let's have a look. Exclusive. One day last summer, James Gunn was busy writing to direct the 3rd installment of Marvel's blockbuster Guardians of the Galaxy franchise until suddenly he wasn't. Disney abruptly fired him and his entire career was appended. Though he would finish that script, the corporation pulled the plug after being presented with the volley of joke tweets Gunn wrote that made light of paedophilia and rape. Tweets were vile and the optics terrible. It didn't matter that they were tweeted a decade ago, that he'd previously apologised, or that he was the target of a takedown campaign by alt-right journalists after his anti-Trump missives. Disney was prompted to act. It had just banished Roseanne Barr from the hottest show on TV that bore her name because of offensive tweets, and Gunn's career was endangered. In a move last March that seemed just as shocking, the studio changed course and reinstated him, having previously written and directed 2 hit Marvel films that globally grossed over $1.6 billion, and this is the truth of why they brought him back, obviously. He will now helm Guardians 3 after he finishes The Suicide Squad. The formerly outspoken filmmaker helped his cause somewhat by not blaming anyone but himself. Now for the first time, Gunn breaks his silence on lessons he learned. How did you feel when Disney's Alan Horde invited you back for Guardians of the Galaxy 3? I was about to sit down and talk about the Suicide Squad with DC, and I was excited about that. Alan asked me to come to talk to him. I really believed he is a good man, and I think he hired me back because he thought that was the right thing to do. I've known him a little going back to the Scooby-Doo movies. I've always liked and admired him. I was touched by his compassion. You hear in Hollywood that everybody's cutthroat. That's true of a section of this industry, but there's also a lot of really good people. I'm always attracted to finding that goodness in places we don't expect. Often in the characters in my movies, I got a little bit teary-eyed in his office, and then I had to go to tell Kevin Feige I had just decided to do the Suicide Squad, so that made me very nervous. Neither Horn or Feige ever met with another director, but your exit was so emphatic, had to come to grips with losing the franchise you brought to the screen. I was writing Suicide Squad and thought of Guardians 3 as being long gone. I guess it was a possibility for a while, but the initial conversation with Alan weren't, let's figure out, I should come back. It was, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. It was like the breakup of my marriage. I got divorced and then had those conversations with my ex-wife. Let's get along as well as we possibly can and be kind to each other because we're both a large part of each other's lives. But I would hate to look back on the 6 years that my wife and I were together and think, oh, what a waste of time. Instead, I think it was time when I really grew a lot and we were really good to each other. There were some problems and we just weren't supposed to be married, but it was well worth living that 6 years with my ex. I wanted to feel that way about Disney. I didn't want to look back and feel bitter, upset or angry, of course. All sorts of emotions are attached to it. But I just wanted to be comfortable saying goodbye and splitting up, and that's where my head was at. Even in the very early meeting we had, week or 2 weeks after it all happened. For a filmmaker with a reputation for being outspoken on social media, your public response to the firing was muted. You didn't blame anyone but yourself. It clearly factored into Horn's decision to reinstate you. What was going through your head at the time? Before I read this, The reason Horn brought him back is because it was his script. He wasn't going to allow that script to be used in a Guardians 3 unless he directed it as well, and that's why he was brought back. Let's be clear here. I don't blame anyone. I feel and felt bad for a while about some of the ways I spoke publicly, some of the jokes I made, some of the targets of my humour, just the unintentional consequences of not being more compassionate in what I'm putting out there. I know that people have been hurt by things that I said, and that's still my responsibility that I wasn't as compassionate as I should be in what I say. I feel bad for that and take full responsibility. Disney totally had the right to fire me. This wasn't a free speech issue. I said something they didn't like, and they completely had the right to fire me. There was never any argument of that. The first day I'm going to say it was the most intense of my entire life. There have been other difficult days in my life, from the time I got sober when I was younger to the death of my friends who committed suicide. But this was incredibly intense. It happened, and suddenly it seemed like everything was gone. I just knew in the moment that happened incredibly quickly I had been fired. It felt as if my career was over. I think the one thing that is the most important for me from that day is this. I'm like a lot of people who come out here and want to be rich and famous to have people love them. I'm an artist first and foremost. I love telling stories. I love interacting with my characters. I love designing sets, but I'm also a guy who found what I thought was love through people loving me and through my work. My apparatus for being loved was my work and being famous. I had never really experienced before that feeling of being loved so deeply. It has been a problem for me in relationships, in friendships. I can experience loving another person, but I have a very difficult time experiencing being loved in that moment. The apparatus, which was my only hope for feeling love, was torn away from me, and I had absolutely nothing. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Should I be locked away? And then came this outpouring of real love from my girlfriend Jen, my producer, and my agent Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt calling me and freaking out. Zoe Zaladana and Karen Gillan all calling and crying. Sylvester Stallone FaceTiming me. And of course Dave Bautista, who came out so strong. And that amount of love that I felt from my friends, my family, and the people in the community was absolutely overwhelming. In order for me to have fully felt that love for the first time, the thing that needed to happen was the apparatus by which I was feeling falsely loved had to be completely taken away. So a part of that day was the worst of my life, and a part of it was the greatest day of my life. I certainly haven't been perfect in my spiritual journey since that time, but I have been better. The first couple of weeks I completely stayed off social media, just completely disconnected from all of that. It was hard as hell, and I was really living a minute to minute, but it was also rewarding in being able to see life from a different perspective. What about the part of you that realises I did this to myself? This injury is self-inflicted. The truth is, I had a lot of anger at myself, and I really had to try and put that aside, because in the same way where I know what I've done wrong, I know that I've done a lot of wrong things in my life, things that led to this moment. I had to realise what I needed to do differently in my life. That was a part of all this. But in the same way, I needed not to be lashing out at whoever fired me or whoever spread links online or cut up my pictures to look like this or that. I also had to let go of some of that rage towards myself as well. Otherwise, I just wasn't going to be able to make it through. You landed Suicide Squad. This is the important thing, DCU fans. Right. You landed Suicide Squad 2 right after settling out with Disney. How did the reaction of rival studios allay fears you were now too hot button to get another job? Technically, my fears were allayed immediately. Jason Blum was doing a San Diego Comic-Con panel when the announcement happened, and he said, I'd hire James Gunn right now. I love Jason Blum, by the way. Great. At the same time, I didn't know what I believed. The news that I was hired back, it was a big story for a day, then it's done. When all this happened, it went for days and days and days. As much as I wasn't reading the news, I was feeling the shrapnel constantly through all of the texts and calls from my friends and family who were so upset at this or that. I finally had to be like, guys, I can't focus on all the negative stuff right now. It just hurts me. The studios, for the most part, said, we'd love to have you. They called within the first 2 days, but I didn't believe it. That's the thing I have to be honest about. And some theatrical level, theoretical level, I was like, well, maybe I do have a future. I'm a fairly logic-oriented person, and that helped but emotionally there was not a whole lot there to hold on to. That was good for me because what I needed to do was stop making my career be what makes me worthwhile and start making me just be okay as myself. That is what I concentrated on. I concentrated on the fun. The Suicide Squad, it just... oh, right, this is brilliant. I read this before, but I actually forgot. This is brilliant, and this is why I'm really excited about James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Right, The Suicide Squad. It just instantly started flying. I don't think I've had as much fun writing a script since maybe Dawn of the Dead. That's what this whole movie has been like. That's awesome. That's brilliant. Sorry about that. I need to get my background back. Okay, right, so that is brilliant. He's really excited. It's the most fun he's had writing a movie before since Dawn of the Dead. How awesome is that? And that should excite every fan. Give another lease on life with Guardians. What characters or themes are you most excited to see through in the third film? When you ask me what was saddest for me when I thought it was gone, and anybody at Marvel can tell you, it's this very strained and attached relationship to Rocket. Rocket is me. I love Rocket, by the way. He really is my dog. I love Groot in a completely different way. I relate to Rocket, and I feel compassion for Rocket. You can tell, actually, he has brought Rocket to life most out of all the characters. But I also feel like his story has not been completed. He has an arc that started in the first movie, continued into the second, and goes through Infinity War and Endgame. Then I was set to really finish that arc in Guardians 3. That was a big loss to me, not being able to finish that story though. I was comforted by the fact they were still planning to use my script. How devastated were you that Rocket didn't sweep the Oscars at his directorial debut, A Star Is Born? I loved that movie. I saw Bradley Cooper recently. I said, I remember when you were showing me videos of Lady Gaga singing, when he was first prepping the movie. You go, okay, here's this actor who's going to go direct this movie with Lady Gaga. I was excited for Bradley, but nervous. I've had a lot of friends who've directed movies, and 9 times out of 10, it does not go that well. What an incredible accomplishment that was for a first-time director. It really was. From one who has come out of the other side, what do you make of the current industry climate in which behaviours are being exposed and people often banished? There's a lot of really positive stuff that's coming out of all of this, and one of those positives is I was able to learn. People have to be able to learn from mistakes. If we take away the possibility for someone to learn and become a better person, I'm not sure what we are left with. I've learned all kinds of things about myself through this process. Wow, that is a sweeping, honest interview, and I really, really liked it. And as you know, my favourite part about that interview was how excited he is for the Suicide Squad, saying that's he hasn't enjoyed the process of writing a film since Dawn of the Dead. That says a lot. That is very exciting, my fellow DCEU fans, and I can't wait. I can't wait for the on-set pics for the Suicide Squad, the trailers. This is going to be a fantastic event, but I want to know what you think. Do you trust James Gunn a lot more after that interview? Do you still have issues with him? For me, I don't care about his personal stuff. I don't know what he said. I don't care what he said in the past. He's a DCEU director. He's a very talented guy. And potentially, he's going to give us something special.